Greetings and salutations, my friends. My name's Ollie, and welcome back to The Outsider's Perspective. As you can probably tell from my surroundings, this is not the next episode in our series on spiritual exploration. No, this is another one of those vlogs, unscripted and delivered from my mind to the screen. I intended to record the next episode in our series over the weekend, but as is often the case, the universe had different plans for me. So I've had to adapt and think quickly on my feet. And you know what? In the end, it actually works out pretty well because we're 6 episodes into this series on spiritual exploration. And the last 2 episodes in particular, I dealt with some content that I think requires a bit more expansion, maybe a little bit more clarification. So that's what I intend to do with this video. But before we get to that, I have to say thank you. Thank you for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for taking time in your busy life and in your busy schedule to listen to me rant for a few minutes. As you know, I get great pleasure from making these videos, and even if nobody was watching, I would still enjoy the process and get a lot out of it. But the fact that there's a handful of people out there who tune in pretty regularly, I gotta say, that's like the cherry on top. So thank you for being those people. I also want to give a shout out to some new subscribers on the channel: Drew James, Michael Boyd, and Lotus Lindley. And last but not least, I gotta say thank you to my creator, Space Jesus, without whom none of this would be possible. So thank you, Space Jesus, for giving me this opportunity to live life as a human for a few years. Now, the last 2 episodes, if I had to summarize them, if I had to summarize the theme or the topic of those 2 episodes, I would probably quote the sci-fi author Frank Herbert. Abandon certainty. That's life's deepest command. That's what life's all about. We are a probe into the unknown, into the uncertain. That's really what I've been trying to do over the last couple episodes. I've been trying to convince you to abandon certainty. I've been trying to get you to get comfortable with the possibility that everything you hold dear, all of your cherished beliefs and opinions, might be deeply and profoundly incorrect. And like I said at the beginning of last episode, I'm not trying to get you to do this because you're actually wrong about everything. This is more of a mental exercise or a thought experiment. I think it's useful in all aspects of life, but it's especially useful when you're about to enter the psyche and you're about to examine your story, your beliefs, the way you look at things. I think it's very important that we achieve this state of mind that I've been describing over the course of the last 2 episodes. The white belt mindset, Shoshen, beginner's mind. The attitude of a novice, of someone who doesn't know. Because if you go in assuming that you know the answer, you will not ask the right questions, and you certainly won't discover anything valuable. Now, all of these topics really boil down to something called epistemology, which is the philosophy of knowledge, in which we try to determine what knowledge is, how people arrive at it, and how reliable it is. How do you know that you know what you know? Now, if that's confusing or giving you a headache, I don't blame you. It's not something that we're used to thinking about. And essentially what we're thinking about is thinking. We're trying to step back and examine the thought processes that lead to our beliefs and to our belief in certain facts or assumptions. Now, today I want to share some examples of what I referred to in the previous video. These chance discoveries that force us to remodel all of our paradigms. I also want to stress that there's a difference here. There's stuff that we know we don't know, and then there's stuff we don't know we don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is there are mysteries we are aware of. There are certain questions, unresolved questions that we are aware of. We know that these are mysteries and we're working on them actively, trying to figure out what the real answer is. But then there are a bunch of other mysteries we don't even know about. So 2 examples that I want to share with you. The first one is of a mystery that, when resolved, actually transformed the entire universe from the human point of view. So back in 1930, or in the 1930s I should say, astronomers believed that the Milky Way was an island universe. Now, this was accepted fact. There was no doubt about it. Amidst the stars that were observable in the Milky Way, astronomers were also able to see things called nebula. And they weren't quite sure what these nebula were, but they theorized that they were basically clouds of gas or diffuse stars, because they were like blobs, right? Imprecise, blurry blobs. Now, in the 1930s, they built this new telescope, state-of-the-art in the state of California, and it's called the Hooker telescope, which is tragically named, but nevertheless, Edwin Hubble had the chance to work with this telescope when it was brand new, and he began to examine these nebula, these unknown objects, and he realized that these things were beyond our galaxy, and more importantly, that they weren't clouds or diffuse stars, they were actually galaxies themselves. So in the 1930s, while astronomers believed that the Milky Way comprised the whole universe, essentially that there was nothing beyond it, Edwin Hubble made this discovery, that all of these weird blob-like objects that astronomers had been theorizing about for a while now, they actually turned out to be entire galaxies unto themselves. So in that one moment, the human model of the universe went from being the Milky Way surrounded by the empty void of space to the Milky Way as one of billions of galaxies. Literally reshaped the way we view the entire cosmos, and it was one discovery. So that was a mystery that was known, right? The nature of nebula. Astronomers didn't know what they were exactly, they were theorizing. Edwin Hubble discovered what they really were, and it shook the entire science community up. Here's another example for you, slightly different. This is an example of a mystery we did not know existed. And in order to tell you this story, I first have to tell you about William Herschel, a German scientist. Now, Herschel was well known in astronomy. He discovered Uranus in the late 1700s, and in the early 1800s, he was busy doing experiments with light. He was studying the nature of light. And more specifically, he was trying to figure out why the temperature of the light beam varies depending on where you measure it. So in order to figure this out, he took a beam of light and he directed it through a prism. And what happens when you do this is that the beam of light comes out the other side in a spectrum of colors from blue to red. And so he began to measure the temperature of each color in this spectrum, and lo and behold, the temperature did vary. The blue light was the coldest, and as he worked his way further along the spectrum, he found that the red light was the hottest. Pretty cool, right? But that's not even the really cool part. After doing this, he took his thermometer and he set it outside of the light beam, or outside of the spectrum. He set the thermometer next to the red beam, where there was no light, no color. And what he found was that the temperature was even higher beside the red beam than it was inside the red beam. Some of you probably know what this means. It means that there's another kind of light, a kind of light that's not visible to the naked eye, and Herschel stumbled onto it completely by accident. He discovered infrared light, completely by fluke. So this is an example of a mystery that we didn't even know existed. We didn't know it existed until Herschel stumbled onto it by accident. And all along there was this kind of light that was all around us, but we were completely unaware of it. So there you have it, folks. 2 examples that serve to illustrate what Frank Herbert was saying. We are probes into the unknown. And for me, this knowledge leads to only one logical conclusion: abandon certainty. Now, I can't stress this enough. Abandoning certainty doesn't mean abandoning belief. It doesn't mean going through life without any convictions or any ideals or any notion of what's true and what's false. It's just taking a step back from these notions and regarding them in their proper light. What's true to you might not be true to me. And we can argue all day about who's right and who's wrong, and it won't bring us any closer to deepening our own understanding. These types of debates about who's right and who's wrong, they're ego-driven, and they don't actually produce any kind of valuable insight or wisdom. I mean, how often do you see a debate where one person completely changes their view or acknowledges that the opposite side is right. It doesn't happen very often, if ever. So instead of trying to find some kind of absolute truth that you're going to lord over people and try to convince them of, my suggestion to you is that through spiritual exploration, through reading and meditating and studying yourself and the universe from many different perspectives, what you're essentially doing is you're widening your point of view and you're allowing for more possibilities. You may never come to believe some of these possibilities, but at least you've opened yourself up to them and you've truly ascertained their value, their usefulness, and their accuracy in your own mind. Now, before I go, I wanted to share one last anecdote with you. It's not about Edwin Hubble or William Herschel or any kind of scientific breakthrough. It's about little old me. And it's about a belief that I held for many years, but that I now regard as completely false. So it's one of those examples from my own life that I like to think about whenever I find myself feeling a little arrogant or a little certain about certain things. So the belief in question is that anger is strength. The belief that anger is useful, that it's a form of armor or a good response to things I don't like. It was like something that I was aware of and that I embraced. And it took me quite a few years to learn the truth about anger, or at least the truth as I see it, which is that anger is poison. There's never a reason, never a valid reason to become angry. And it's never really useful either. There's never really a situation in my life where anger would serve me better than calmness. I've had people tell me, well, anger is a good motivator. Maybe, but there are better motivators out there. Motivators that don't rot your insides, that don't raise your blood pressure, that don't make you feel like crap afterwards. So anyway, that's one example, and in a couple episodes I'll share another example of a belief that I once held and that I now view as completely inaccurate. But for now, I think with the two stories of Edwin Hubble and William Herschel, I think I've supported my points well enough. So anyway, if you've got any questions or any concerns or any retorts, any comebacks for me, anything that you disagree with, I'd love to hear about it, because obviously I'm always trying to expand my views. And I'll see you next week for episode number 7, which is called Only One Tells Stories. You can probably guess which one that is or who I'm talking about. Anyway, I'll see you then. And oh, here you go. Perfect timing, buddy. You want to say bye to the good folks over in internet land? Well, they can't see you from here. Hold up. Don't touch the microphone, my man.
Dad?
That's a microphone. Yeah, you want it? Here, look. Go like this. Jump up. Oh, put your feet up. Okay, look. You say, oh, it's bright, isn't it?
Oh, it's bright.
You say bye.
Bye.